When it comes to dryer duct, you might think it's just dryer duct. I just got to run it to the outside. Maybe you're moving your laundry upstairs from the basement, or maybe you got two laundry rooms so you can have an upstairs and a downstairs. You're adding it to your garage or something. You got to run some dryer duct. Think, man, pretty simple. Just run a little dryer duct. There actually are quite a few code components that go with dryer duct. And so I'm going to run through those with you. So if you are putting in some dryer duct, you have a general idea of what's needed so that hopefully you can get it done right the first time and not have any issues down the road. So first, let's dive into the code, and we'll just peruse through some code, and then I'll show you a couple pictures that I got from a new construction so you kind of have an idea what it is that I'm talking about, and hopefully it'll help clarify maybe any questions that you might have when it comes to dryer duct. So we have closed dryer exhaust. So closed dryer shall be exhausted in accordance with the manufacturer's installation instructions. All of these appliances, the furnaces, the AC units, the dryers, they all have specific installation requirements. And so the code is going to give you kind of the minimum, but it's always going to tell you to refer to your manufacturer's installation instructions. So if you buy a dryer and the dryer says, hey, you need a 10-inch dryer duct, well, that's what they're telling you to put in. The code is going to kind of give you the minimum. So just keep that in mind. Obviously, dryers change, right? Your dryer goes bad, you got to get a new one, and then it has new requirements to it. Most all dryers follow these guidelines, but I'm just kind of giving you that caveat that there could be a situation where your manufacturer's installation instructions call for something else. And so let's first talk about duct termination. So you've got this dryer duct and you have to terminate it outside somewhere. You need all that airflow, all that moisture to go outside. Well, they want to make sure that that termination is not less than 3 feet in any direction from openings into buildings. And so you're going to want to keep it away from windows and doors, right? Any type of opening that, maybe you got your window open on a nice spring day, but you're doing laundry, and now that dryer exhaust is exhausting outside and going right back into your house. Or you open your back door frequently, and there it is, the dryer exhaust is flowing right back into your house. So when you go pick your location, sometimes you don't have a lot to choose from, depending on where your dryer is sitting and how far you have to go to get out. You might not have a lot of locations, but just keep that in mind. Try to stay 3 feet from all of that. And when it comes to windows, if you're like, I only have this one spot, well, just try to make sure you're 3 feet away from the opening side of the window, right? Maybe it's like a sliding window and the part you're next to is the stationary section, but the actual open part, if the window was open all the way, would be 3 feet. You should be fine. They're just trying to keep you away from openings. So now an exhaust duct for dryer also has lint and stuff, right? And lint is very flammable, right? It's a fire hazard. They want to keep lint from building up in there. They don't want lint to build up. So they don't want screens installed over that, right? Because if there's a screen on there, maybe birds or something want to get into there, you're going to get buildup. And then if you get enough buildup, then it's not going to dry. My mom has a long dryer duct. It goes, I'm going to tell you, it probably goes 20 to 25 feet. It goes down, goes through their floor system, and it pops out. And for the past year or longer, she's always like, my dryer does not dry. I put the clothes in. I have to dry them like 2 times to get them to dry. They finally went and looked in their dryer duct, and there was a bird's nest. And the dryer lint was built up. And they cleaned it all out, and now all of a sudden, everything is drying. So make sure you don't put a screen on it, but you are required to put a damper on it, which is just those little flaps, right? It's a little flapper that you put over the front of it so that when it's on, the little flaps come up and it allows the air to blow out. When it's off, it kind of flaps down and keeps the birds out. So no screens, but you are required to put a damper on the end of it, which is those little flappers, and keep it 3 feet from any opening. Let's go down into size. Let's move myself out of the way here a little bit. So exhaust ducts shall have a smooth interior finish and shall be constructed of metal not less than 28 gauge. The duct shall be 4 inches nominal in diameter. That's pretty straightforward. Dryer duct is usually 4 inches. I'm going to show you a chart here where it'll take it all the way up to like 10 inches, which is probably mostly in like a commercial situation. Or like I said, if your manufacturer's installation instructions call for it, maybe you got a really high-end dryer, gas dryer, and it just requires a lot more exhaust. You might check that. And if it does require that and you only have 4-inch, then maybe it won't dry as well. Just kind of like I was telling you based on the story of my mom. She was not able to get enough air out of there, and the moisture just could not get out of that duct because it was just too full. And so you want to make sure all that stuff's clean. You want to make sure it's, not full of lint and whatever else might get in there. So 4-inch, and so let's hop into the next part. So here we have 4-inch, like we talked about, for minimum. So the duct shall be 4 inches nominal in diameter minimum. So here it talks about length identification, right? It says where the exhaust duct equivalent length exceeds 35 feet, the equivalent length of the exhaust duct shall be identified on the permanent label or tag. Okay, so that's, again, that's going back to the listed and labeled, the installation instructions type stuff that I've been talking about. But we'll get into the maximum length here in a second, but it's kind of telling you maximum length of a dryer duct is 35 feet. And that's if it was a straight line. Once you start adding 90s and 45s, then it starts cutting into that maximum length that you can have. So protection. Anytime you go through a stud wall, you go through a top plate, you go through the floor, you maybe go through a bottom plate, they want you to protect that pipe. And they want you to protect that pipe because they don't want screws going into there. So when you put your drywall in, or maybe you're hanging some furniture, some shelving, something like that, they don't want those screws to go into that dryer duct. So here they're telling you that protective shield plates shall be placed where nails or screws from finish or other work are likely to penetrate the closed dryer exhaust duct. Just simply put, you're just going to put nail plates up anywhere that you penetrate top plates. Is really what it comes down to. And I'll show you a picture of that here as we get along in the video. Next, it's going to talk about installation. So here they're talking about exhaust ducts shall be supported at intervals not less than 12 feet and shall be secured in place. So you just want to make sure that your duct does not rattle around in the walls. If it's going through a floor, make sure it's supported. I would support it every 6 feet, not 12 feet, and I would support it on each side of a transition. So maybe you've got 10-foot chunks of duct, and at the joint, I would protect it on either side of that, and then protect it again on the next side. And now here it's telling you that ducts shall not be joined with screws or similar fasteners that protrude more than 1/8 inch into the inside of the duct. This is a big component. This is something that can get caught on inspections, on code correction calls. The whole idea is to make sure that that duct is totally clean, and you don't want lint buildup. Well, if you have screws penetrating the duct, it's going to catch lint. So they don't want any screws, or per code no more than 1/8 of an inch, protruding into that duct. I suggest using a mechanical approved tape. You usually can get like, it looks like tinfoil almost. It's like a tinfoil type tape, and it's like an approved mechanical tape, and you can tape all the joints. That's what I would recommend. That's what I would do, is just tape all those joints all the way through. That way you don't have any screws in there, and it's nice and clean and smooth duct all the way through. Here they're talking about transition ducts, okay? So you're going to end up with a your hard pipe, right? It's a smooth hard pipe. You cannot put flex duct in a wall, right? It's got to be hard 28 gauge, smooth, rigid pipe. And so then you're going to end up with that kind of flex pipe, that flex duct from the dryer to this pipe that's in the wall. And they're telling you here that it can be not greater than 8 feet. Transition duct shall not be concealed within construction. So that's saying like this transition duct this flex duct can't be in the wall, right? It's the pipe you're running, this the 4-inch rigid hard pipe is what's in the wall. That's what would get inspected before you cover it. And then that connection pipe can be a max of 8 feet. And I'm sure most of you have gone to the hardware store and you've bought dryer duct, and it's just, the corrugated, and you pull it and hook the clamps on and you're good to go. But when you pick your location, just make sure you're not more than 8 feet from your dryer. You should be good to go. I haven't seen very many instances where that would be the case, but it's at least good to know depending on the layout of your project. Now here we jump into duct length. So the maximum length of the exhaust duct shall be 35 feet from the connection to the transition duct from the dryer to the outlet terminal. So again, that's just from the wall to the outside. Where fittings are used, the maximum length of the exhaust duct shall be reduced in accordance with the table, and I'll show you the table. So every time you use a 90, you have to cut 5 feet off that length. Every time you use a 45, you got to cut 2.5 feet off that, and that's with a 4-inch duct. And so it'll say that you have to put in, maybe your pipe goes down into the floor, so you have to 90 to get in the wall, and then you have to 90 to get into the floor. Well, that's 2 90s, so you got to chop 10 feet off right there. So now the max length you can go is 25 feet. Well, you've got your 90, and so you got to drop 2 feet down, you get into the floor, and you 90 again. Okay, well that's 12 feet, because you got 2 feet of duct, and then you got 2 90s that are equal 10 feet. So there's 12 feet off of your 35, and then that's what you have left to run to get to the outside. So make sure you do your math. Kind of reverting back to my mom's house, she has a really long run. I would highly recommend to try to keep it as short as possible. There's just less things that can get caught up in there. And the quicker it can get to the outside and release the moisture, the better for your appliance. That's just my own personal take on it. Obviously, your project's going to lay out how it lays out. But if you have the ability to move and adjust, do it. So back to our code here. Here is our dryer exhaust duct fitting equivalent length. So here's what I was talking about. So you have a 4-inch right here, 4-inch radius, mitered 45-degree elbow, and you have the equivalent length is 2.5 feet. And if you had a 90-degree elbow, it's 5 feet. So here, like, you got 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch. Most everything that I've ever seen in a house is always 4-inch. So those are just kind of the numbers to work off of. Every time you have to add one, just subtract from your total length from 35. 35 is the maximum, so just subtract from that. Okay, so that should kind of cover the basics on a dryer duct, right? Short as possible, 4-inch solid pipe, no screws, no screens on the outside, 3 feet from openings, and maximum 8-inch flex from the dryer to the actual connection. Should be good, pretty good to go. Let's look at a couple pictures. So this is new construction. So here they've got a dryer duct insert right into the wall, so you can hook it up and then you can actually push the dryer all the way back. I know, like on my house, the dryer duct, there's no room to set it back like that, and so my dryer sits at least 4 inches off from the wall if it's nice and tight. And you don't want to kink that pipe, so you don't want to push too hard and kink it. So here's like an inserted dryer duct connection inset. And then here's your 4-inch dryer duct. And so right now they don't have any 90s, right? They're just straight up and out. It's 4-inch, it's solid, it's in wall. And then here it's coming up. And then once it's getting into the attic, and it's flowing out through the house. And you'll notice a couple things on here. I talked a little bit about nail plates, right? So anytime it's going through a wall where a screw or a nail or something could puncture it, it needs to be protected by a nail plate. So they protect it with a nail plate. They also foamed it so that it wouldn't be rattling around in there. It's nice and tight. It's not kinked. But once I get into an unconditioned space, so now we're talking about crawl spaces and we're talking about attics, mostly, right? Get up into an attic, it's not heated up there. Well, it needs to be insulated. So here is the insulation that they've wrapped around that duct to protect it. So in a nutshell, that kind of covers dryer duct.